would like to welcome to the show Josh, who is a video producer and a fine jewelry buyer's agent. And he's also a crystal subject matter expert. So, hi, Josh. I'm glad for you to be here. Thank you.
Hey Lawrence, so good to see you, buddy. Great to catch up again. What's happening?
Yep. All good. Initially we did a quick chat yesterday, and it's almost took an hour that we have a lot to talk about, and we'll probably won't be able to cover most of it today as well. So, but we'll try to cover as much as we can. So, on before your spiritual awakening, what were you doing?
My spiritual awakening was not like a standard jolt of awakening. It's been quite gradual. I grew up um, kind of in a family that was a little bit alternative for a Western family. Like my mother, she had a friend that was a psychic. Her name was Noni, and she had like amethyst crystals in the house and stuff like that. And then my father was on the other side, and he was a famous photographer, but he'd practice astrology and homeopathy and acupuncture. So he was into those sort of alternate healing modalities. And I remember waking up to watch cartoons on a Saturday, and he'd kind of be meditating in his room and stuff. And it was always a little bit interesting and fascinating. Yeah, so kind of, I mean, it started early. Like when I was in school, I was doing martial arts, and when you're learning like about the Chinese martial arts, you learn about qigong and breathing and energy and moving energy through your body. Back then, it was more about the hard style and external, like how can we be stronger and punch harder and take a hit and stuff like that. Um, yeah, and then that kind of developed through. Like I then went into high school and got caught up with all the fun stuff you do there and into life. Um, so I always had a curiosity about sort of spirituality and like this understanding that potentially there's something a little bit different than, how the culture sort of perceives it. But the one moment that I remember that sort of defined it for me was my mother's friend Noni. I remember it was like a New Year's Eve, sort of around the year 2000. Um, and she saw me. We're out at a big public event, and then the next day, my mother called me and she goes, "Josh, I've got a message has come through from Noni. You need to listen." And I said, "What is it?" And she goes, "Oh, she believes that you're going to be a very young father and you're going to have a child when you're 18." And I was like, "Whoa, okay, sure." I didn't know whether to believe that or not. Whatever. That's mum's kind of crazy friend. And but then, sure enough, the destiny was fulfilled, and I had a child at a very young age. So that was kind of one of the first sort of sparks of maybe there's a little bit more going on here, and there's a bit more
Yeah.
access to knowledge and consciousness than 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 meets the eye and what we learn in our Western society. Yeah, so that's kind of the very initial early points. Some of the significant parts relating to crystals would be that my brother married a Sri Lankan lady, and maybe 2006, we went on a family trip around Sri Lanka, and my eyes were widened to the island of gems. There was jewelry stores on every single corner, like you'd see,
Oh,
7-Elevens in
wow.
Sydney. They had the buildings that was like two towers, and there were 7 stories each, and one story was the financial district of Sri Lanka in Colombo, and the second tower was 7-story mall full of every single shop's a gem or jewelry shop, or they sell equipment for cutting gems and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, that's kind of exciting. Um, and during that trip, it was the end of the trip. It was about 20 days in. We were staying at this really nice hotel, and I'd chartered a fishing boat that morning, and I'd caught this fish. So I was standing in the restaurant. It's like a 5-star restaurant with its own sort of seafood restaurant on the beach, and I was standing in line with this big fish, and the guy in front of me turned around and he's like, "Josh, oh, he didn't know my name. He's like, you do realize that you can just buy fish here?" And being a bit cheeky, I was like, "Well, you do realize, I think you're a bit jealous because I got the freshest fish in the country right now."
Oh,
And he
wow.
laughed and agreed because, the hygiene standards aren't the same there. And this was caught that day. Yeah, so I said, "Why don't we sit down and share this fish?" And then I learned about his story, and he was there from Ireland and England, and he had this big jewelry shop, and he'd been there for a gem show that was happening, and he was buying like super high-end sapphires and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, it's Charles with your name. I was like, oh, well, I've been buying gems and rocks, and the whole time I've been here in Sri Lanka touring around. So after dinner, he came and had a look, and I had all these rocks out, and he goes, Josh, my one bit of advice to you, he goes, throw all of these in the bin. It's not even worth paying the extra baggage weight to take them home. And I was kind of like devastated, like, oh, come on,
Oh,
man.
wow.
Like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, show me what you've got. And then I went back to his room and he pulled out this beautiful blue, marble-like sapphire called a star sapphire. And I'd never seen a star sapphire before. And it's basically like a sapphire, but it's rounded instead of faceted like a diamond. And it
Hmm.
has what's called asterism, and it projects a star out of it.
Oh,
And that's
wow.
created from titanium strands that make a hexagonal pattern. And when the light hits it, it refracts this beautiful star. It's called a star sapphire. It's one of my favorite gemstones. Um, and I was looking at it, I was going, oh wow. I go, how much is that worth? And he's like, oh, that's about 40,000 US dollars.
Oh,
And I was
wow.
like, oh wow. And then he pulled out another one, a matching pair. And in jewelry, if you've got a matching pair, the price per carat's even higher because you can, make a matching pair of jewelry.
Yep.
And I was thinking in my mind, I'm like, wow, that's like $80,000 worth of sapphires. And I was like, Charles, what are you going to do with those? And he's like, Josh, I think I'll go back and make a really nice, smart pair of cufflinks and sell them in my store. And then in my brain, I'm trying to calculate, he's bought those for 80,000 here in Sri Lanka. He's going to make a pair of cufflinks. I'm like, someone's going to pay like 150 or $200,000 US for a pair of cufflinks. I was like, wow. So my mind was kind of blown open, and that was kind of where I got my first taste of the excitement of gems and jewelry. Um, but then sort of for the next few years, just came back to Australia, just did my sort of life stuff. I started a film production corporate video studio in my town where I live in Canberra, which is in Australia, which is like the capital of Australia, but there's, only 450,000 population. So it's like a small, small city in America or anywhere else in the world. I built the biggest and only film production studio. So I was into storytelling and video production and the corporate world, and you kind of just, in that cycle. But one of the things that I like to always invest in was crystals. So I'd go to a gem show, and I met this local gem trader. His name was Alan Arnold, and I'd kind of, I'd look at all the stalls, and his stuff, for some reason, I didn't have any idea, but I just knew that they looked way better. There was something about them that was a bit more attractive. Anyway, he looked at me, and I'd always wear my suit jacket and everything back then, and he'd be like, Josh, I'll give you a little bit of education. Why don't you come to my house, have dinner, a glass of wine, and once you see what real gems look like, then you'll know not to buy garbage anymore. And I was like, yeah, sure, okay, that sounds good. So went to his house. You walk down the stairs. It's a beautiful big house, but you walk down the stairs into a basement room, and you think you're going into like an underground garage or something, and it just opens up to this like beautiful gemstone museum, and like that every single wall is like layers of shelving with beautiful lighting on it, and all the best quality of crystals are from around the world that he's collected, over 50 years. And then he started explaining to me with crystal collecting that, it's about the locality, where those crystals are from, specifically what mine. Sometimes those mines are extinguished and unavailable anymore, and then the price can skyrocket. And then he taught me about aesthetics and what makes a crystal beautiful and collectible and what to avoid and look out for. So I always had this interesting interest in collecting crystals as like an alternative asset class. But at this stage, I kind of wasn't really into the meditation as much. I was just into like collecting really nice fine crystals. Um, I guess where did it go from there? I started doing a meditation group on a Wednesday night at the local shops, and the guy there started teaching us about the sort of chakra system, and he had the Egyptian 15 chakra system, so there's a few more chakras. And then I did a crystal workshop with him where he taught us how to, connect with the crystal, hold it on different chakra, get messages, and start a communication with the crystals.
Yep.
And that was kind of pretty fascinating. And then I found that like when you've like you can get energy out of any crystal, but when you have the really nice collectible, nice size, good aesthetics, the energy and the communication's just insane. So yeah, that was kind of the slow sort of slide into it. One of the other sort of key points in the story is early on, even though I kind of dropped out of high school or dropped out of college because my girlfriend was pregnant, so I figured I'd better go and I've got the weight of responsibilities on my shoulders. I better go and get some jobs. Um, so even though I dropped out of school, I was always interested in education, but I didn't like that sort of education we are getting from,
Mm-hmm.
here learn some science and maths and all that sort of stuff. So I was very into personal development at a very early age, and I studied into neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, sort of self-hypnosis sort of thing. And that's all about using your language and to create visuals, imagination, to awaken someone's imagination in their mind, to sort of take them to different points in their life where they might have had some trauma or they want to plant something that they want to manifest in their future, and to sort of shift the way they store that information so they no longer see it as a problem, or they're energized by the idea of creating this thing. So I studied NLP and self-hypnosis and learnt that language, which I feel is very sort of prevalent with what I do now with crystals. So then I'd been collecting the crystals and I started applying what I'd learned, because initially you hear all these people that like, oh, they have these great visions and they can see guides and they can communicate and do all of this stuff. And at the time I was just collecting rocks that looked really pretty and were valuable. Um, and then, so it just started off where I'd first start to feel the energy of the crystal. Like I'd hold it, I'd imagine, the crystal sort of in my mind through my imagination. I'd just imagine some of that energy sort of going into my hand, and I'd be like, oh, I'd think to myself, is that energy warm? Is it cold? And I'd start to isolate it and be like, oh, that's a warm energy. And I'd be like, what color is it? Oh, it's a yellow energy. And then I'd use my imagination to push that energy through my body, and then all of a sudden, all of my senses kind of woke up from there. Um, yeah, and that's kind of
Oh
how I
wow.
got into it, really. Yeah.
So, what plans are you having with future with crystals or be with your other businesses as well?
Yeah, sure. So I've run the corporate video production studio since 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always loved storytelling. And, people always go, oh, you're so lucky because your hobby is your business. But, after 10 years, your business becomes a business. And I sort of lost a little bit of that spark. Um, and and I thought back to my roots in kind of Sri Lanka and the connections over there. So I created a business called Vivid Jewels, which is like a sort of fine jewelry buyer's agent. So I applied what I learned from video production and meeting a lot of different people, and the big property boom. There was a lot of property development videos, and these guys would use buyer's agents to sort of, help people, or people use buyer's agents to help kind of to buy properties. And I thought, I wonder if I can apply that, because I had the big studio, and then you fully committed to it, and I was like, well, I want to do jewelry, but I want to do it in a way where I don't have these big overheads weighing me down. All the current model is, you're on a high street, you got a beautiful, $500,000 $1 million fit out, you got all these staff, you've got $1 million worth of stock in all of your shop. And yeah, I thought there's got
Yeah.
to be a better way of doing it. So I created a jewelry buyer's agent, so like a consultant, where using my knowledge and understanding of the best localities in the world to buy gemstones, what makes a great sapphire and gemstone, the color and the clarity and all of these things, my ability to buy at the start of the logistics line rather than purchasing at retail.
Yeah.
And I created a business that offered, I'll get you way better quality gemstones than what you're going to get in Australia in the retail. Um, I'll be able to custom design it exactly how you want. I'll, sit down and use what I learned from video and film and storytelling to be able to sort of get a really good brief and understanding and draw that essence out of them into a design using mood boards and feelings and stuff like that. And then I'll get it to you at way below what it's going to value at. So every single piece of jewelry I've made is always valued somewhere between like 30 to 80% more than what they've paid for it, which
Oh
is usually
wow.
typically the opposite. It's like buying a car. You buy a car, you drive it off the lot, and the next day it's worth
Yeah.
less.
Yeah.
Same with jewelry. Like, you buy a nice diamond ring, it's never worth the same. It's now a secondhand diamond ring. They're very common. But all the jewelry I've made has been worth way more. And not only is it worth more, but it's going to accumulate over time as
Yeah.
well. Like even since I started the business in on Valentine's Day in 2023, like I made this one guy the most amazing emerald ring, and already since he first valued it to now, I guarantee that it's probably gone up 15 to 20% in value already, just
Oh,
because of the
wow.
stature and the quality of the gemstone within the setting. So I kind of had this sort of shift in my career between, making really nice videos and storytelling and harnessing emotion and and impacting people in that way into Vivid Jewels, a jewelry business. But it's very upmarket. Like it's kind of starting, I can best help people when it's like a $10,000 up kind of arrangement. And I was like, what I've learned from meditating with crystals and like the energy I feel when I kind of hold them on my body, or I put multiple to create an alchemy. It's such a magical experience and feeling. And one of my good friends, I'd helped him start acquiring crystals for aesthetic reasons, and he's a little bit superstitious, so he's always like, oh, let's get me a nice big citrine because it'll make me a lot of money. And then now, eventually, after kind of a couple of years of giving him some tips and pointers, he's able to sort of hold these, and he goes, Josh, and he's like, this little crystal, and it's like tingling. He's like, it's burning my hand. I'm like, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You're starting to feel, and he's a very visual kind of guy, so he's now able to sort of already very quickly take that feeling and translate it into an image in his mind and see visions of kind of, for him, he's a very materialistic focused guy. He wants to build all this empire and everything, so he's able to, get clarity on the visions and stuff like that. And I just realized I found so much joy in that. I was like, all the stuff I'm doing, I'm like, this is great. And it's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like a chef in a kitchen, you know what I mean? You've got all these, you might have 40 spices to choose
Yeah.
from, and you could put a little bit of salt on, your steak tastes different. You put a bit of salt and a bit of herbs taste different, a bit of garlic tastes different. And you can layer it up, and you can create this sort of alchemy of sensations and feelings inside you, that feel really great. And I just feel like, if you buy a really nice high-end piece of jewelry, like I wear a beautiful fossilized opal on my
Oh,
neck, and that's
wow.
awesome. But it's like, as you can see, I've got some crystals in the background. I can sit there, pick one up, meditate, and it'll take me to a totally different place every time. It's like a little opening a portal or a gateway into another world of experience and emotion and feelings and hearing and communication and seeing, and so yeah, I want to kind of share that with people now. So I've started scurrying away in the background, kind of working on a new project, which is called gemadvice.com. And the goal of Gem Advice is to be the world authority on crystals. So I want to take what I've learned about the aesthetic side of collecting crystals and how to collect crystals that are valuable and will appreciate in value over time as you build your collection, and also teaching about the metaphysical aspect of it and how to hold a crystal, feel the energy, translate that into some visuals and sensations, and start the communication and travel with these crystals and everything like that. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with my sort of timeline.
Wow. That's cool. Blank out. Oh
Beautiful.
my
I'm
God.
glad you can feel that transmission coming through, and the passion and the energy. And I've always been lucky because I've always done the job that I've loved. But the my passion and excitement for crystals that's what I want to share with people.
Oh, wow. That would be awesome because there's a lot of also there's because of the rise of the demand of crystals right now and the new spiritual awakening, and there's a lot of fakes popping out as well. So I think there's also a huge demand on people sharing how to discern from it and everything. Also, I'm also curious on your works, like if you can share like samples or photos of what you have done so that we can share to the audience as well and everything.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, yeah. So with fakes, it's always a little bit tricky. Like, if especially when you're starting off, you don't know, you need to be buying off someone that's trusted and reputable.
Mhm.
One of my main mineral guys that I collect, some of these beautiful, you know, collection pieces from, he travels the world. He's mother's been, her whole life in the mineral industry. He travels the world. He goes to the mines. He helps them develop better mining techniques so they're not damaging the crystals. They're able to extract them at their maximum beauty and value. And there's little tricks like, you can shine UV lights on the crystal and you can see if there's any sort of glue where they've reconstructed the crystal back together. And sometimes
Wow.
now the glues are getting so good that you can't see them under a special light. So he'll literally get like a lighter and a pin and like heat it up and like just scrape it along the crystal. And if you can smell a little bit of, chemical burning, then it's been reconstructed. And a lot of
Mhm.
people do still sell and buy reconstructed crystals, and some of the best crystals in the world have been reconstructed because they're so rare and when they were damaged bringing them out, so they've had to do that. And that's okay, but I like to buy stuff that's kind of the premium at the best because it's
Yeah.
like a blue chip property. You get that best stuff, and there's only a certain limited amount. Like for example, I bought some nice Vanadinite the other day, and for the last 2 or 3 years on social media, you've been seeing that just come out in droves, come out, but in 2 or 3 years from now, you're not going to see that again for maybe
I
another
know.
5 or 10 years until they find another deposit. And is that deposit going to be as nice as the last one? So it's good to know who you're buying from. I think is important. Um, yeah. So that's with the fakes. In terms of uh, like in terms of like jewelry I've made, I
Mhm.
guess the first ring I ever made was called the connected sapphire, and it was a friend of mine that really kind of believed in me at the start. We made a ring that was about, I'm in Australia, so currency is a little bit different. It was about $29,000 ring and it
Mhm.
valued at $55,000. And
Oh,
the center
wow.
stone is a 7.2 carat intense cornflower blue sapphire
Oh,
from
wow.
Ceylon, from Sri Lanka. So, in Australia, or, if you're just buying a gem for an engagement ring, for example, like you don't know that sapphires can be like, it's dark blue or it's a medium dark blue, and that's how they rate it
Hmm.
at a jewelry store. But when you get to gem collecting, they go, oh, well, that's a royal blue sapphire, or that's a cornflower blue sapphire, right? So that's like two of the best colors you can get. And that comes down to personal preference. Like royal blue is worth more. Cornflower blue is a little bit of a lighter blue, so it's like a lot prettier, I think.
Yeah.
And it comes down to personal preference. So it's cornflower, so it's already ranked at a higher than a standard blue sapphire. It's a
Hmm.
cornflower blue sapphire, but then it's called intense cornflower blue sapphire. And what the intense means is that it's more bright and vivid, and the color's more saturated, and
Oh,
just
wow.
you look at it and it's not dull. It like shines at you more. So it's called an intense cornflower blue sapphire. Um, and took me a while to source the stone because it was a sort of, a rectangle emerald cut, and sapphires are typically sort of round and oval shape. And because of the size, and, I had to reject probably 10, 15 gems until I got the right one. And then I found it and I negotiated the price. And the best thing is when you negotiate the price, you lock it in and you say, all right, now go and get a certificate from a reputable lab. And then the lab certificate comes back and says intense cornflower blue. It's worth like 10 to 15% more than if it was just cornflower blue.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's always great when one of the clients I'm working with, we get that. And that's why the business is called Vivid Jewels, is because vivid is another word. Like intense has to do with how saturated or how bright the color is, but vivid is how bright the light that shines back out of the gemstone is. And I thought Vivid Jewels because I always want to find that quality for the person. And also vivid, like with your imagination. Sometimes they come to me and they might not have, I've got a bit of an idea, like, oh, I want a blue stone about this big and maybe some diamonds next to it. And it's like they've got this faint idea. So I run them through a series of questions to help make that idea crystal clear and vivid in their mind. So vivid jewels. Um, but yeah, that was beautiful. I made that, had shoulder diamonds on either side, set in platinum. But when I gave it to I flew up to deliver it because it was like the first big one. And one of the beauties of the business is like out of the pieces of jewelry I've sold, only a handful have been from the town I live in. Most people are sort of outside. So I flew up to hand deliver it, and I said, every piece of jewelry has to have a name. What's the name of this crystal? And she said, well, it's the connected sapphire. And I said, all right, what does connected mean? And it was the name of her sort of Pilates studio, and like has this holistic connection sort of vibe with your health and energy in the world, and everything around you is connected. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And then I said, well, it's a blue stone, so it's got to do with the throat and communication, and speaking your truth. So how does that sort of come into it for you? And she said, well, her partner had bought it for her. And she said, well, I feel that this is going to create a stronger communication and bond for us before we get married. And I was like, oh, okay,
Oh, wow.
beautiful. So then I don't just leave her with that ring. I was like, all right, let me teach you how to activate this and feel the energy of the gemstone as you wear it. So it becomes a talisman, not just an accessory. So she put it on. We ran through this process, and then as she's putting it on, she's feeling the energy running up and down her arm, and just like her eyes are closed, and you're seeing the smile and the sparkle on her face. And I was like, "Wow, this is yeah. I gotta do this properly and set it up as a company." So that was the first piece of jewelry I'd sold. One of my favorites was I'd bought this kunzite, which is a pink crystal, and they say like it's like a computer game. If a rose quartz is like, that's unconditional love, that might be a
Mm-hmm.
level one crystal. Like a kunzite in terms of like the heart chakra and love is like a level three. So they say kunzite's the closest vibration on planet Earth to pure love,
Oh, wow.
even closer than chocolate. And so I bought this beautiful kunzite. It was from Afghanistan, and I just bought it because it was just a great deal, and I just felt connected to buy it. And I'd sat it there for a few years, and then all of this war stuff where America retreated from Afghanistan, and then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden the price was already quite high because it's 100 carats, shot up. And I was like, damn, that's that's awesome. So anyway, I made that. Someone came to me and wanted to make that into like a beautiful pendant to wear.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked all the right questions. What's it about? Explained that the crystal's about, pure love. And then we thought, infinite came in, infinite love. So we made the design, and maybe you can pop it up on the screen. It's like this figure eight around the crystal, and it's got nearly 4 carats of diamonds all the way around
Infinite,
it.
yep.
So it was
Abundance.
infinite love. So it looked good from the top. But then I was looking at the design, which is computer designed, and like the side, because it was such a big crystal. I'd never worked with something that big before. It's
Oh,
100
wow.
carats, so it's kind of huge. I was like, the side just doesn't look right. What can we do? Like, how can we, make that look beautiful? And then I kept asking more questions, and I found out that sort of, she was from this sort of her psychic friends would say that she had these angel wings, these small angel wings, and that she's like an earth angel. And I was like, well, let's design angel wings onto the back, even though you don't see the back unless you're kind of looking from the very side on 90 degrees or you spin it around.
Mm-hmm.
So we created these beautiful angel wings all the way around and incorporated them to the design, and bedazzled those with diamonds as well. And it just the
Oh, wow.
the thing's just insane. Beautiful. That'll just continue to go up in value. Like, when she hands that to her granddaughter, down the track, that's going to be worth
A
multiple
lot.
times what she paid
Yeah.
for it. But just walking around with that energy of love like that every day, that's really cool.
Was it a necklace or?
Yeah, so it became a pendant. So you can probably
Oh,
flash it up
wow.
on screen, and
Okay.
yeah, it's a pendant. So it just sits there on the upper heart chakra. So if anything, it's probably hitting more of an internal sort of love thyself rather than love everyone or love your partner or anything
Mhm.
like that. So yeah,
It's
yeah,
more like
really
focusing on your
beautiful.
heart chakra. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so tell me more about which direction are you heading with your crystal subject matter expertise or something?
Yeah, for sure. So I want to kind of take that to a more of a mass market, a bit more down market, like that's great to do these one-offs and that person can just love and treasure that. But how can more people have access to the love and joy of crystals that I find? So the first couple of products I think that we'll release, so we'll build what Gem Advice will be is it's the critical resource, like the number one sort of resource of information. So you know everything about every single crystal. So it's an amazing encyclopedia, which is going to be a big, big build. And then laid on top of that is going to be a community where people can sort of share and talk about crystals and their own experiences. And then also inside of that is going to be sort of education and training and online, like from how to cleanse and what to do when you first get a crystal to how to connect and communicate with it, all the way through to the different specific crystals and ways of working with those, and then into more advanced, which is like the crystal alchemy, which is you've got one energy from one crystal, energy from another crystal. When you put those two energies together, you create a third new energy and then incorporate that into what you're doing every day. So that's the vision with Gem Advice.
Oh, wow. More, it sounds like it's like a custom jewelry just made just for you or something like that. And
Uh, Gem Advice, Vivid Jewels, that's what
oh,
Vivid
Vivid
Jewels is.
Jewels,
It's a
yeah.
buying agent, but Gem Advice is just a readily accessible resource for anyone. For anyone that wants to learn and know about crystals.
Oh,
They can
wow.
access that for free on the internet. So I'm going to start downloading and sharing all of my knowledge into that and pour everything into it. And it's going to take years and years and years to build this volume of information and then teach and then also offer some really nice crystals for sale so people can build nice collections as well. Um, but if they want to go and buy a crystal somewhere else, that's fine. Or if they've already got that crystal, I still want to happily teach them how to use it because I get so much joy and excitement out of that. But I want to teach people how to be a bit more discerning in purchasing a crystal that's, not going to be worthless in the future.
So technically you'll be shooting. Do you have collections of crystals that you'll be shooting with or showing with the audience? I mean, not
Yeah.
right now, but sooner on that.
Yeah, so I'm
Um,
going to start with the basics, your sort of rose quartz, amethyst, and just explain my understanding and my experience of that. There's a lot of information on the internet where it's like, this will do that for you, buy this
yeah.
and you'll be wealthy, get this and you'll find your lover. I don't want to tell anyone anything. I just want to share what I've learned and experienced. And you find that people have shared experiences and like coming back to that chef analogy, it's like someone that's matured the taste palette, they can taste, oh, there's coriander in that, or
Mm-hmm.
that's a specific paprika or something like that, and you can develop that with crystals, so you're feeling a kind of different energy when you're holding different ones. And I kind of, yeah, I want to just start sharing that information with
Oh,
people
wow.
as it
That
comes
would be
out.
awesome. I will. I can't wait to see those episodes. I'll probably watch them as well. So,
Thanks, brother.
so tell me more about how do you call this? I just saw that you talk about the you saw a seraphim as well on one of your stories. Can you tell me more about that one?
Yeah, I've always had a connection with this idea of a seraphim angel, which is kind of an angel that has six wings with a light body that's fire, that just burns at an infinite speed. And I, the lady my mum was friends with, Noni, was an artist, and like yourself, Lawrence, she'd paint portraits of guides, and they were pretty wild and amazing. She passed away, and I was fortunate enough to receive some of her artworks. And one of them was called Papa, and I've got the portrait in my hallway at my house,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's always like it's like a photo, right? Like like a race car drives around the track and it's kind of blurry and fast moving, but when you take a photo of it, it's just still. So I'd never been able to interpret it properly. I was like, that just looks like an interesting, a lot of colors and but I was doing a deep meditational journey when this seraphim came to me and I started seeing it with the flames moving and the fire in it. And I was like, at first I didn't know what it was. I was like, oh, it's just some interesting being that I've met during my meditations. But then when I walked down my hallway and I turned to the side and I saw the portrait, I was like, oh, that's just the seraphim sort of frozen in time. Um, I do an interesting thing, and I can send you a video you might be able to show when I wanted to first talk about kind of changing from my corporate production life into crystals and metaphysics. I didn't know what better way to sort of announce that to the world than to make this really cool video. So maybe we can sort of
Yes,
screen
please.
that to show people. But basically, what it is I live near the National Gallery of Australia. It's just down the road, and there's a guy, James Turrell, that's built this place called a Sky Space, and it's kind of like it's a grass pyramid like that, and you sort of to walk into it, you kind of go down a bit under the water, and then you come into this internal space, and there's water around the side, and inside is this giant sort of room that looks like a giant upside down crystal bowl. It's got a hole in the roof. So then you walk from that inner room into the inner room. Um, and I found out one day I'd kind of go there and meditate. And I found out one day when after the meditation, I did a big like sort of sigh, and then the whole room started shaking like
Wow.
I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I started practicing some toning. Like during when I was studying personal development, I had these Wayne Dwyer CDs on my iPod back in the day, and he sort of talked about like chanting. So I got into that a little bit. And then I started doing some tones, and all of a sudden, this whole room was just shaking. I was like, this is unreal. And like as you're breathing out, it feels like the energy in the air is coming back in, and it brings you this real place of presence, and it's like time evaporates and you kind of I don't know, like people can spend a lot of time learning to meditate and looking for that stillness. I found that you can just go here, do this chanting, and it takes you to that straight away. So it was like a little bit of a cheat code. So I was doing that a long time just by myself. I'd go there in the evenings. I was a little bit embarrassed to go there or let anyone know what I was doing. And then sometimes I'd go there and there'd be other people there. And then either sometimes they'd just leave because they couldn't handle the energy can get quite intense. And then other times people would just start joining in and chanting as well. And then I'd walk out saying namaste. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's pretty fun. So then I thought I'd start inviting some people that I thought might be sort of open to having that sort of energetic experience. And then kind of yeah, I'd bring him in and would do some chanting. Then I just felt this calling to invite one person at a time into the center where there's this beautiful circular stone in the center of the room, which is a sodalite crystal, which I found out later is like the #1 crystal for initiating deep hypnotic trance, which is pretty cool. So you stand on the middle of this sort of sodalite disc, and up above you there's a hole in the roof, and you can see out to the stars at night. It's quite beautiful. And then would have everyone chanting at them, and I'd do this meditation where you'd sort of breathe in up to the central sun, pull that energy down to your heart, breathe down through your feet, through the floor, and feel the lava core of the earth, and then bring that heat and warmth up. And then you do this as long as you sort of feel right. And then the last time you bring the energy down from above, I'd imagine seeing it coming down into the shoulder blades, and then having people's angel wings sort of emerge out of the back of them. And then you could even feel it. Like you'd just wriggle
Yeah.
your shoulder and you'd be like, feels like there's a bit more weight there than normal.
Yep,
And
yep.
so I started doing this technique that I sort of just, came to me. And then, yeah, one night I was, those times you're sort of up at 3 a.m. and not sleeping for whatever reason. I couldn't sleep, and I was like, all right, I just jumped on Facebook and started scrolling Facebook. And then I saw this post from this lady called Katie Lee, and she said, seraphim angel Katie. And I was like, oh, I know what a seraphim angel is. I've heard about that. And then I went onto her page and I scrolled down a little bit, and she had this angel wing activation. And I listened to it, and it was basically the similar same thing. I was like, that's so wild. We've got this shared experience, and I don't even know this person. They're on the other side of the world. So then I started chatting to her, and then that kind of led me to understanding and opening up and learning more about the seraphim. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. And I think one time, I think before I see her video, I was already manifesting and anchoring the one who have wings. And there's a point that all my back is all painful just by anchoring that. higher self because
Mm.
of the wings and everything. So fun stuff. So
Yeah, it's
what do you
pretty
call it?
wild, isn't it? Like, because
Yeah,
sometimes you think, what am I experiencing? Like, how do I tell people or share this with anyone? And then you meet someone that has a similar or the same experience, and you're like, whoa,
you know.
it's pretty
They
wild.
say if you keep on being genuine or being like doing what your passions are, and you may lose friends that is not vibrationally matched, but you're also attracting new friends and new people that is technically in conjunction with your experience and everything. So I think that's I'm not sure if some people see that as a distraction or more like a renovation, but I see it
Yeah,
as, they,
it's a
that,
renewal. It's kind of like the snake symbolism.
mhm,
It grows, it's starting to grow so big it needs to shed its skin and so it can continue to grow and develop itself.
mhm. And technically, we become a different person every 7 years, I guess, because our body keep on refreshing
That
itself.
regenerate, yes,
Yeah.
that's all scientifically proven. Like your liver can regenerate in 5 months, I think, and even your bones every 7 years they've regenerated into the biology and atoms are all new and different.
And now you're a different, technically different person. So, oh boy. So, oh, it's home. So, what I can say is, what will you be able to say to little Josh if you were able to travel back in time and see him?
Okay. I'd say like, dude, you got such a beautiful, magical life ahead of you, full of fun and friendships and travel and experience and man, just enjoy yourself
Oh, wow, it's
and
beautiful.
buy more houses earlier.
Buy more houses. Just enjoy it, the hard ones and the good ones. So just enjoy life. And what do you call this? Before we also end, where can people find the things that you're offering and the wonderful job that you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So I've been pretty reclusive the last couple of years on my Instagram and everything as I've just gone into, cocoon mode and building out this new business and identity and everything. I think the best thing they could do is go to
Mhm.
gemadvice.com and there's a waiting list there. Chuck your name and your email in there, and then as things come to fruition and build out, I'll send you some information. You can start learning how to enjoy crystals and be as passionate as I am.
And I'm sure that there's gonna be a lot of people waiting and probably dropping a lot of questions. So how about this crystal? How about this crystal? That's, so I
Happy
bet
to
there's
help. Yeah, that's what I want to share, that information.
so you maybe should start some kind of episode soon because they may be asking for the same crystal over and over, like 50 questions for just an amethyst. So I'm not sure, but we will see. I'm excited as well. So
Yeah, thanks, brother. We're just finishing up the sort of going through the branding phase and getting all the colors and logo and everything right and creating that structure of everything and then we'll start, yeah, building the community.
oh wow. So technically, I was about to ask what will be your offerings and everything, but looks like we've been discussing that the whole segment. But if you haven't covered anything else that you're future or currently offering, do you have any or something?
Oh, look, I'm just wanting to share my information. If you do want to buy a really nice high-end piece of jewelry, I can make that happen at a really great price and something that is more of a talisman than a off the shelf. But yeah, man, I just want to share. But I've got a question for you.
Sure.
So one of your skills is you like can see and draw people's sort of higher selves. I don't have that vision. Can you
Yeah.
share with me what does my higher self look like to you?
I haven't tuned into in yet. Normally, I don't tap because a lot of people is asking tap into me, but I don't really until I the vessel gives me consent. I normally tap into them, but the question is which one?
Okay.
So because you, like I said, there's higher selves that you have right now, which is active with your spirit teams, but there's a ton of them in your billions of lifetimes that's in the back. So,
Wow. Okay.
and your higher selves right now is assorted. Some in alternate timelines. I look here sometimes to see them, and some are different dimensions. So you have galactics, you have angels, and you have negative higher selves, lower selves. It's just a species or entity. Let me explain again. If you see a
Yeah.
Black Panther Liran as a galactic to someone who doesn't see an ET, what they will say, demon. So let's say, do you also see a galactic which is a mantis or an octopus? People will say demon. So it's not negative or something. It's just non-human. So if
Mm.
you encounter them tonight or within the week or within the month, let me know. Then probably they're the one that's coming up right now. But there's a ton of them. There is also ascended masters. No, yes, ascended masters and ascended ancestors. So you
Okay.
have ascended ancestors who are already beyond their regular ancestor that ascended, like ascended masters. That's why they call them ascended as ancestors. And of course, there's angel. Everyone have a guardian angel, but you have extras as well. And that seraphim is there as well. So there's more than that seraphim. So there's more to them, and you may encounter them through your what do you call this, meditation, or sometimes watch out for mirrors, they're saying. Don't be scared. They might probably you see something there, or like when you're okay. They're saying try doing this. This is an Arcturian what do you call this? Soul integration method.
Oh, getting the good juice now.
Look into a mirror, then start saying that I call all of myself who are ready to return to me now in all place, timelines, and planes of existence, past, present, and future, and stare in your pupils in a mirror and stay there until you feel staying. That's it. And you can do that like one time, two times. It's fine because what happens when I did it, I'm not sure what will happen to you, but what happens is that when you start to take in the other you, they will show you their experiences or their timelines through your dreams or giving you mental images of it. And sometimes while staring into that mirror, you will see their faces. And sometimes they are not human. Sometimes they look old, young, all sorts, female, other use, technically in other this plane or a different plane. So that's what I call soul integration. But that's another method. There's multiple methods out there, but this one is a little bit scary to some because you're technically doing it in 3D, 5D plane. So that's going to be fun. And it may bring you a lot of, you will see a lot of stuff if you're ready. But if you fear it, just don't do it. Nothing might happen. Fear pushes everything away and everything. So, oh boy.
For sure. Thanks for the hot tip. I love that.
So there's more into it, but there's multiple steps into this spirituality that was fed into me. So that's one method that I used for soul integration. And once you integrate them, it's like the same thing as soul. What they do is like anchoring my future or other self who is like a genius in business or a genius musician and
Mm.
acquiring their skills. So soul integration starts on branching out your other self. Now you're starting to not emerge, more like reconnecting them all to you. So this technically initialize that. And when you do that, it's easier to anchor them in this other you and everything. So you will know how many yous will come. And sometimes in a week, especially the prominent ones, you will see their lifetime and everything. Some of them may be coming from post-apocalyptic era. So, when you're dreaming, it's outrageous. But if it's too real to differentiate, that's another timeline that you just
Mm.
absorb someone. And sometimes when you absorb or reconnect with another you gain their skills, their luck, their abundance, and everything else, technically. So it's within your access. So I hope that will help you more. And I hope you can share more about your experiences with soul integration. So, boy,
For sure, for sure. All right. Well, thanks for having me, and let's do it all again soon.
thank you. Again, thank you for being in the show. I'll put everything in the show notes, your link and everything, and I'll probably ask you for the photos and videos that we talk about within the segment. And thank you for having me and joining the show. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Lawrence. You're a legend.
Thank you.